Hello and welcome to Richard August, the autistic Christian MGTOW, the red pill man who lights it up blue. This is tonight's reading from the Issana Press publication of Relics of Repentance, the letters of Pontius Pilate and Claudia Procula, and this relates to events that happened around the time of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Tonight I will read from Parchment 1 of a letter from Claudia Procula, the wife of Pontius Pilate. And we begin with a verse, Matthew chapter 27, verse 19. When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, Have thou nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. A letter from Claudia Procula, the wife of Pontius Pilate, Parchment 1. You ask me, dear and faithful friend, for an account of some of the rumors which have already reached you concerning Pontius and myself, and you appear frightened at the mystery by which we are enveloped. Read this, my scroll, and give to me at least an understanding, for, O Fulvia, I am the wife of the man who condemned Jesus Christ to death. If even here in this little Gallic mountain town where Pontius and I have been driven by remorse and by the scorn of Rome as well as that of Jerusalem, if even here children shy away from us and women draw their veils closer, let me believe that somewhere some woman will understand, even as she, the mother of Jesus, should have understood. But first remember my childhood in Narbonne. You will recall that I had scarcely completed my 15th year when I was betrothed to Pontius, then holding an honorable position in Illyria. I had never seen Pontius before my marriage feast, nor did I know any love, nor how that flame may burn in the human breast. Pontius somewhat praised my beauty, and I know he esteemed my wealth, for he was ambitious. Love he held a weakness fit only for women, for Pontius was a philosopher. Although the flute players pleaded all night before my bridal chamber, they did not know I lay alone, for Pontius had put me from him, saying, I seek truth, the truth of life. Often he would rise from his library closeted with his scribes and pose against the dawn and my empty arms. The question, what is truth? Thus 5 years passed before I became wife enough to be a mother. Then I lived a new life in the rapture of my child. But Fulvia, only love can beget love and its perfect image. My son Pilate was so beautiful, so bright was his smile that the very slaves looked up when he passed. Yet my son had a withered foot, but soon he learned to walk with a very little crutch. Pontius was divided between his chagrin and a son who could not be a soldier, and pride that he yet had an heir to his name, old as Rome itself. Now ambition stirred in him the politician. Caesar's favor named him consul of Judea, a step toward Egypt. Thus we came to Jerusalem. None of the vast lands which paid tribute to Rome were more beautiful than these purple hills folding back into the yellow sands. Roses and scented myrtle trailed to every rooftop, while palms, lovelier even than those at Delos, waved above gnarled gray olive trees or groves of oranges or those scarlet pomegranates of which Solomon had sung. Above all, even our Roman courts, towered the mighty temple of Jerusalem, its sacrificial smoke smudging the sky. But all the flattering pomps and pageantries of our coming mocked us. The Hebrews detested us, and our court of idolatrous pagans, as they styled my countrymen. These Jews were a turbulent people, and very heady. Their 1,000 sects were united only in the hatred of Rome. Some few believed the time had come to pass for a Messiah to appear who would make himself king and overthrow our own power. In this we felt them very secretly abetted by Herod, not for any treason, but that he had a cousin who would supplant Pontius. Now he would show that Pontius could not rule these people. Herod held his right, most because he was a fisherman, and Caesar too was a fisherman. And they wrote one to the other about their fishing in the ripening of that spring. Now we were apportioned part of the palace of Herod, and were much beholden to him. If Herod drew upon himself the scorn of those Sadducees he sought most to please, with his dancing girls and wine feasts, Pontius too was hated by the Pharisees, with whom we would wrangle his question, "What is truth?" Austere and very just in his judgments here, yet my husband judged not the ache in my heart, nor turned to me then as to a faithful servant. Had it not been for my son Pilo, I would have died of loneliness in Jerusalem, even in all the dazzling circumstance with which Rome upheld our court. My son became my love, my life. Withered though his foot was, he was brave and would put aside his crutch, and endure without any protest all the torments of the pullers and straighteners Pontius brought increasingly, for he looked more and more to our son. Now at this time we had acquaintance with one Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue. When Pontius would argue with him his philosophy, I would sit in the woman's court where the fountain is, and embroider upon my veils with his wife Salome. They had an only child, Smidia. She had then just reached her 12th year, and was as lovely as those dawn roses which in all the world grow only in Jerusalem. When Pontius spread out his hands against the argument of Jairus, I in my loneliness listened to Salome. First in my court, then many times on her own roof, she whispered to me of one Jesus of Nazareth, the son of a carpenter, who walked among these people, healing the sick, curing lepers, making the dumb cry out, the blind to see. And how he had made a lame child leap up whole, a lame child, O Fulvia! Now others, unbelievers, politicians, the Pharisees themselves, began to talk of this Jesus. Herod told us he had taken up a tribute piece from a fish's mouth, and laughed heartily, and so did all. Then they said he raised a man of Bethany from the dead. Now all Jerusalem rang with this Jesus, but in his discourse was no miracle, only the healing of empty cleverness with simple truth. Salome told us that Jesus said, "You must become as a little child to know God." But Pontius forbade us or any of the household to approach Jesus, for Pontius was very learned, nor would he wish to become as a child. When once I pleaded, he put me by with, "Yes, yes, I know, this Jesus has turned water into wine. He multiplied a few loaves and fishes to feed many. He disappeared out of a crowded room, but so the conjurers of the East have done. Let him show me how it is done, so I myself may do these things, and when I do them I may believe. I want truth, not trickery. Hold thyself, Claudia Procula, very high. Thou art a Roman's wife." But now I pitied Pontius. He had many cares and a very lean look. His rulings took him often from us, and then he had lost his taste for life itself as one who, grown arid among his parchments, could not see what was real before himself. Many learned men are so, Fulvia. Then a strange sickness fell upon us that summer. Its malice gathered with the heat. Particularly it wasted children with a torpor like of death itself. So it numbed my son. He thinned, whitened, fell. Even Pontius was roused. He sent runners to Athens, to Alexandria, to Rome itself for drafts, and the weakness increased. Now the gentle sweetness of my son was scarcely of earth. I trembled. Then the child of Jairus and Salome was stricken, and quickly. The night Smidia died, the physicians also turned away from my son's couch, for there was no more they could do. Pontius, to meet the end, closeted himself with his Stoics. I was alone with my dying Pilo and his tutor Mata, a Greek slave to Pontius. Now Mata pressed a tablet in my hand. It was from Jairus. It said, "Jesus will come to Smidia, even dead. Do thou bring Pilo." A faint trembling light shot into my soul. All else had failed. My child's last breath was almost burned out. Could he, this Jesus, save my son? Scarcely knowing it was my own voice, my arms, my substantial self, I followed Mata. He held Pilo very greatly and glided softly, swiftly into the dawn, like a shadow with a shadow. I had not known it, but Mata was secretly a follower of Jesus. And when he came into the street of Jairus, our chariot could not proceed further, for the crowd was so great. Mata would not have known us imperially, so I stood heavily veiled as a mourner. Thus I was slowly given passage through the outer wailers and the flute players, and the many poor, and those fisher folk who followed Jesus, and those Pharisees and scribes who seek the more to trap him into treason against Caesar. These would give me no entrance beyond the vestibule, for they wished not witnesses. But, O Fulvia, to have come this far, and now be denied a chance to ask Jesus for the life of my son Pilo. Then at the head of the stairway I saw Jairus. Before the authority of his hand a way opened upward. But when I was at the bedchamber door, Jairus quickly withdrew, and I could not move further now, nor yet descend again. I could only wait there, pressed, agonizing. So I saw into the chamber of death, and through the clouds of thick incense, Smedia lying upon her funeral bier, very white with complete death. Beside her, utterly bowed, was Salome and many burning candles. And then I saw him, Fulvia. Then I saw Jesus. Scarcely did he seem a man to first sight, nor yet a person. Though his face and hands, his very garments, were as those of them about him, his presence was more than human, some undefined feeling, as of the very essence of life and love itself. The radiance of his love had filled the entire chamber and beyond, like an empty vase now filled with precious spikenard. So I felt all the heights and depths of my being flooded with the love of Jesus. All bitterness left me, and the crowd became calm. Suddenly I saw Jairus throw himself upon his knees before Jesus. He cried, "Lord, my daughter is dead. But say but the word, and she shall be healed." A shudder ran through my frame. My very soul hung upon his words. Then Jesus took Smedia by the hand and said, "Arise." Fulvia, she obeyed him. She rose. Her eyes opened upon us all. Slowly her face flushed with life. She looked into the eyes of Jesus. Then she threw out her arms and cried, "Why, Mother!" Still transfixed, I did not know I had fallen upon my knees, but presently I was aware of the trampling crowd. There were shouts about me, but so strangely few of joy, and these alone from the household. More were of hate, and many hissed. I turned desperately every which way to try to get to Jesus. But the crowd crushed me down the steep stairs, and tided me further and further until I sobbed with my despair. For now I knew I could not ask Jesus to heal Pilo. So they pushed me through the shouters of hate, and the Pharisees who called him loudly, "Blasphemer, hater of Caesar," until I was forced into a little passageway roofed with gourds and some long cucumbers. And there I heard a cry. It will ring forever in my ears, "Mother! Mother!" At once I turned, and through all the multitudes sprang Pilo into my arms. Pilo, erect and firm, without any sickness in him, and more, nay, more. He dragged no withered foot. My Pilo leaped and danced with all joy. His feet were as lovely as his face. Pilo, my son, was made whole. Before I had asked of Jesus, he had heard. More than I had asked, he had granted. This is the end of Parchment 1. Thank you for watching and listening. And I'll be back tomorrow with Parchment 2 of the letter of Claudia Procula.